Yes.
Bob,
Hi.
Lordy, there are more tapes. Dear God, isn't that
Yes.
the most amazing thing is Kevin McCarthy being exposed for having some level of human decency that he quickly was able to squelch. But I mean, this is just hilarious, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah. In fact, what this has done, this series of tapes, has given us a scientific measure of how long it takes a Republican's spine to turn to jello, right? So you've got these tapes with Kevin McCarthy. Let's say January 10th is the centerpiece of the tapes. Those are the first batch of tapes that we got on Friday, January 10th. And then by, I think it was, what was the date of the second impeachment? It was January 13th. So in 3 days, Kevin McCarthy's spine went from, hey, maybe we should step away from this Trump guy to, oh, maybe we should defend this Trump guy.
Right.
And that was, 3 days. That's all it took for everything to revert back. It was all, I compare all of this to sort of the days after 9/11, where there was an opportunity after 9/11 to bring the world together, to unite the world around positive things. Let's say, okay, after this catastrophe, everyone's backing the United States. Hey, let's do something about the climate now. Let's do something about green energy now. Let's all unite around some sort of positive, proactive cause. Instead, we frittered it away on invasions and occupations and things like that. In this case, right after January 6th, there was an opportunity for the Republicans to see the light and go back to the world of the normals. And they just abandoned that for political expediency and making sure they're not intimidated or bullied by the Trump Red Hats.
That's exactly what Eric Swalwell said yesterday.
I actually was so foolish to believe that once we were put in the evacuation room, that we would come out of it united, and that would be our antidote to make sure a day like that would never happen again. And they were as terrified as I was inside that room. But what did they do? They came out of that room. We didn't have unity to saying that the election was stolen, creating the same exact ingredients for another combustible event in our country. And so it is really maddening to see how much criming they were doing ahead of time. And you just hope that there's going to be some accountability, a reckoning of sorts for their roles.
Criming is a verb.
Nice.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
I was just going to say that was great, except for the use of criming, which I object to strenuously.
But I mean, from the New York Times, Bob, McCarthy feared in the aftermath of January 6th, several far-right members of Congress would incite violence against other lawmakers, identifying several by name. I mean, the same thing we all were saying, right? And it is just sort of stunning, right?
This gives us an idea too in terms of how willing they are to abandon their core values and just rally around Donald Trump. Once again, party over nation, party over the integrity of the Article 1 powers. I mean, remember this mob of Trump supporters wanted to overthrow Congress. I think we've almost misdefined what happened during the insurrection. They wanted to seize Congress and control the Article 1 powers.
Yeah.
That was the whole mission there. And fortunately, they failed. But that was the goal. That is unprecedented. I think we forget how unprecedented that was. Even in the darkest times for America, during the Civil War, that never happened.
Yeah.
And so here we are, and the Republicans have to,
Well, I think there's
turn
so much
to jelly.
If you pardon the expression, criming, Bob, that they almost benefit by the number of bombshells that we all just like, I don't know, everyone's forgotten Jared's $2 billion Saudi payoff. Everybody's forgot, but AG from Mueller, she wrote, said the fact a sitting member of Congress texted the former president urging him to use martial law to overthrow the government isn't the number one story right now, is indicative of our new normal. So now we have more gotcha tapes, I guess, but it really is sort of mind-numbing how close we came to losing. And thank God you're on it on Twitter all the time in terms of just turn out. Like we've got to make democracy our issue. Like you said, according to the latest Senate polls, it's really tight, but all isn't lost. There are 5 toss-ups: Kelly, Warnock, Masto, Toomey's seat, and Ron Johnson. If we can hold our leads elsewhere and overwhelm the turnout in those 5 races, we can defy history in that chamber.
And it's all true. I mean, I think and we see this every year, every time there's an election, midterm, general election, what have you. where I think cable news, to some extent, wants to gin up drama and excitement around a race. Oh, it's, the Democrats are going to get trounced.
Yeah.
That whatever the narrative happens to be tends to be a little bit removed from the reality of it.
Yeah.
And just look at the polls right now. It's not as dire.
That's what they said. The
seems.
Exact same thing about Macron in France. That they absolutely said the same thing they're saying about Biden now and Democrats.
Right. And also, I think we've all observed this. I think there's something janky with the polling going on right now. And we've seen this since, I remember, seeing the results of the 2012 election, for example, and going, wow, the polling was pretty accurate. Or following Nate Silver, for example, the polling and the forecasts were really accurate. Now we're in this phantom zone where the polling tends to be wildly separated from the actual end result. Well, now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a cakewalk, and obviously don't get happy, but we could be seeing erroneous polls that aren't necessarily reflecting what's really happening.
I mean, you had some great exchanges on Twitter. You retweeted Celery said, or stay home in disappointment of what Biden hasn't done yet and cede victory to Republicans and gift themselves and their future children with worsening wildfires, pandemics, hurricanes, mass extinctions, back alley abortions, political imprisonment, and worse. And you just said they shouldn't expect miracles when they didn't turn out enough to provide working majorities to pass the miracles. It's like ordering your dog to fetch a stick while it's still chained to the leash you're holding. Why won't this dog fetch back to the shelter with you? That's a perfect... Yeah, and also you said all those Republican trifectas, that's where abortion will be a criminal act, punishable by prison terms longer than some rape sentences. It's where LGBT will be driven back into the closet, where black people will continue to be disenfranchised. Vote smarter, America. That's our job, right, is to wake up our side before these midterms.
Yeah. And the first tweet you read was directed at younger voters, and this ongoing thing that we have to do every time there's an election, dragging younger voters to election day and to polling places and trying to desperately get that demographic to vote. And it's really challenging. I think there's an anachronistic idea, and it kind of played out in some of the replies under that tweet, which is that the Democrats need to do something for us before we're willing to support them, or we need to withhold our vote in order to get what we want. And I think that's fine in normal times, but we're not living in normal times right now. There needs to be a priority toward winning and containing, marginalizing the Trump movement, and that needs to be priority number 1 through 1001.
Well, as you said, I think this all the time, Bob. You said this June it'll be 7 years since the escalator, and I still can't believe this unserious bag of trans fats is their chosen messiah.
It never stops amazing me. Every time I see him speak, I can't believe that he's their guy. This is the person they've landed on. Out of all the Republicans in the world, they've chosen Donald Trump, the cartoon character from Manhattan, who we made fun of for 50 years.
Yes.
And he's their guy.
And by the way, you framed one of the issues perfectly. Someone said dozens of gunshots send children scrambling for cover during a Little League baseball game in North Charleston. You said, but good Lord, don't mention your gay marriage to these kids or they'll be doomed. I think somebody said, Bob, we shouldn't say these are culture war issues. This is them trying to force white nationalism, Christian nationalism on all of us. I mean, it's not, these are culture issues. I don't think most people have a problem with their kids knowing gay people exist. I mean, right?
Right. Yeah. Obviously, there's an appeal toward to bigots and homophobes and transphobes and so on here. But on the other hand, the Republican Party is no longer about any core values, like that one way or another. They don't hate or love anything. They're building this brand. It's sort of the Donald Trumpification of the Republican Party. So it's all about the patina of fighting the culture war. But then they're abandoning things that the Republicans have long held secure, like, we shouldn't raise taxes especially on corporations. But now I watched on Hal Sparks' show the other day, Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly talking about jacking up tax rates for Disney and other corporations to punish them for taking political positions. Which they're allowed to do thanks to Citizens United. But yeah.
Real quick, you also said, to be clear, I'm not leaving Twitter, not until I'm kicked off. It's better to stand your ground than to wander away and allow the freaks and weirdos to flood the space unchallenged. That's where I am. And I'm with George Takei and Mark Hamill, and we got midterms coming up. Let's just hold. Everybody hold, like we're in Braveheart. We love you, Bob Cesca.
Hold.
Hold. All right, we love you, Bob Cesca. See you next week. Mwah.